Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Timelkov.
Happy Friday, everyone. This is a special edition. Normally we do it on Wednesday, but this week we have a great guest today and someone who is really passionate about diversity and having especially the gender diversity champion, president of AI Public Relationship, storyteller, and an author of a book, Confession from the Cubicle, and problems young women face in the corporate world, a topic we're very interested in. And since we're on a mission to bring some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world and see more people thrive at work, not survive, we are very interested to welcome Alix Edmiston. Alix, thank you and welcome on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Marian. I'm delighted to be here. I love your mission, and I'm thrilled to share my thoughts as well. Have a great conversation.
With pleasure, and it's really you're touching on a very important topic nowadays, and this is really how can we see, especially in this context, young women thrive, and we are living in a world that probably we're at the greatest time in terms of opportunities, in terms of connectedness, in terms of knowledge sharing. Yes, there's a lot of turmoil and insecurity at the moment, but generally, if we look where we've came, it's just we live really in a very abundant situation in place. Yet we have a lot of challenges: mental health, well-being. Young women are feeling depression, and there's a lot of difficulties. So what inspired you to write the book and to do what you do? I mean, what is the flame that's burning in you to do those things?
Well, Marian, it was just one of the inspirations for writing my book, and I wrote it quite a few years ago, was I started out as a reporter and I went to journalism school, and then I chose to pivot and go into public relations, to go into corporate communications. So when I got into the business world, it was quite different. You know, I was in my early 20s. It was quite different than what I had trained as. And I realized I was such a square hole in a round peg. And I felt like, it was at a time where, again, you didn't have, you recognize that, I recognized all the managers were male. Like, you just recognized that you didn't see somebody that looked like you at the top levels. And so I felt, how do you thrive and survive in this environment? So I wrote my book, and I've always been the type of person, I am a storyteller. I love giving voice to people. And so I did write the book. I self-published it. I'm kind of like that, where it's like, at the time I was able to lay it out, like I was able to do everything. So I decided to write this book, and it was a primer for young women entering the workforce. And what I did was, again, because I'm a storyteller, I just had women tell stories about what was happening to them in the workplace and how they overcame it. And so, it was just great being able to do everything through stories like that. And I ended up getting some really great coverage where I went on TV. And it was the first time, I'm a corporate communicator, and I counsel people, like I coach people on going on TV. So that was really my first media moment, which was me. And but I really felt that was so important, guiding other women. And I still feel it's such a theme that guides me in my life, is that we have to help one another, right? If you see someone, coaching and mentoring, it's so important. But I mean, I think even like, everybody thinks this mentoring should be this formal program where, Marian, I'm going to mentor you or you're going to mentor me, and it's going to be formal. We're going to do it on Wednesday evening or whatever. But I really feel like it's so important where we reach out to one another and we see if somebody asks somebody if they need advice or help someone, And so that was kind of the impetus of doing my book and getting it out there. And I just had a lot of fun doing it as well.
Well, it's really, when you talk about corporate communication and how important is that really to really share those, share really what you do with the world.
Yeah.
It's and we all hear, of course, the things that you don't communicate, the things that you communicate. Tell us a little bit more what's coming, what's happening, from inside the kitchen, so to say.
Yeah.
What are the kind of challenges of doing the role?
Well, I think what's happening, and I'm really, and it was probably for me about 5 years ago. I love, being a leader who cares. I love the side of what I call advocacy PR. I really love when a company believes in something. So it's probably about 5 years ago. It was a little bit before Me Too, actually. And I started working with some clients who felt like, I do work in tech, but also financial services, but they really wanted to help close the gender gap. In tech here in Canada, I think it's something like 20% of the workforce is female in tech. And we are trying to move that needle, and it's happening very slow as molasses. So I was really thrilled that, we started this conversation, and believe it or not, I started it with male leaders. And I'm so proud to work with some amazing males who are so committed to attracting women and to having a diverse workforce. And that's where, just from a corporate communications perspective, we can get out there and spread the word. And part of that as well, working with leaders was building a community, right? And with one of my clients, one of the first things that we did is we said, okay, we want to make change. And I was like, wow, how cool is this? It's a male leader wanting to do this. And so again, I do believe in small steps. That's how we get to change, right? And so we started out with an event, an evening event. And the first event, we attracted about 50 women. And now we're in our 6th annual. But, you'd think that one event, it's like, okay, one event is one event. But it was really the building of a community. And the women, so we built a community that's about 500 women. But it really was that building of the community and because we all were on the same page, right? And we all wanted to drive change. And that was the thing that I think is incredible about PR and communications, is bringing everybody together and also, starting a conversation. And our rally cry was turning conversation into action. And so, we just didn't want to get together and have the party where we all talked and fussed over things. We want to take that conversation and drive action. So I loved how leaders, and I love doing that kind of work where you're really trying to make a difference, right? You're trying to move the needle, and then you're bringing together all these other incredible women and allies who want to move the needle as well. So myself and the president at that time of my client, we ended up getting in the Globe and Mail. We ended up doing a lot of contributed articles. We ended up getting in the Harvard Business Review. So I really feel like we made such incredible change together, because, PR, we are often talked about spin doctors or whatever, but we're trying to get out really key messages, right? That are really important, right? To get out, but we can also change behavior as well, right? And you've seen that many times with PR campaigns that have changed behavior. So we're still doing that. We're still working. Now we've sort of brought in other groups as well, other university groups. So I was really proud of how, again, just stepping up and making change, you could all of a sudden, you become someone who's known as a gender diversity advocate, right? Somebody who really cares.
What would be your advice to leaders that basically are keen to increase the gender diversity? What is in tech, what is other industries that are probably male dominated? First of all, is it needed? For example, they might be in the army, typically women may not have desire to be in.
Yeah.
Or if you look at medical industry, there's probably in some case 80% is female. So there's a disbalance. So really, the question is really from your point of view, as someone who's seen a lot, what is the advice of leaders that are keen to increase the gender diversity, how to create the conditions for young women or coming on board to thrive, not just to increase it because of some sort of a box ticking exercise, but to really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that the passion has to be there. I mean, I think as we're moving forward, Marian, part of being a CEO is you are going to have that DEI focus. Like, you're going to be focused on equality. You want to support gender, diversity and inclusion. It's interesting because I took a program in the summer at Yale, and it was on women's executive leadership, and incredible women from all over the world, so passionate in this program. It was just incredible. But one of our first exercises was to talk about what leaders we thought were successful and then what leaders we really admire. And so it was so interesting what a disconnect there was, because the leaders that we were talking about who were successful tended to be very financial successful. They had financial success, right? And then the leaders that we felt who cared, those were the ones that we really wanted in place. So one of the takeaways from the professors, the instructors, was that we are moving in this direction of, like, you are really on the, you talking about leaders who care. This is what the direction that we're going in. So I think as we're hiring, you're going out to find leaders. I feel that part of the job description and what you're looking for is going to have that diversity inclusion focus. But I would also say with leaders that, I've always said, and you mentioned, like, how do you drive change? If you're a leader who doesn't really passionately believe in it, you're really probably not going to see that much change. I mean, I really feel like you can't delegate this to HR, right? This is not an exercise that you delegate to HR. One of the things that we say in corporate communications is change starts at the top, right? It's modeled at the top. And if you don't have the leader who's out there, because nobody will follow, right? I mean, we really need that leader out there who's going to model that behavior and say, this is what we believe in, and this messaging is everywhere. And he or she is out there, on LinkedIn or giving a speech, or all of the messages consistent that this is what we believe in. And you certainly see that at Accenture, because they actually want to get gender parity. I think it's by 2025. And they are very close to having gender parity. And so I really feel like with a leader, that's, you really have to believe in it, right? So if an organization wants to move towards gender parity within their ranks, they really do. You have to have that leader at the top who is passionate and believes in it.
Excellent. No, I believe very much it starts with the character and the vision.
Yeah.
The leader. And I've seen it many times where you can attract success attracts certain people, but retaining them very much depends on who you become, or the character of the leader, or leadership. And if you do not do things in the right way, often I want to say caring way, not beyond just your self-interest, exceptionally gifted people, talent, and everyone, and generally speaking, is very sensitive to the way you treat people and you treat your colleagues. So it's really important that you cannot fake those things unless you believe. It's okay if you are not there yet, but you want to become better, or people will give you that grace and will stick with you in that journey of growth and transformation. But it is really challenging when people do not sincerely care about others, and really it's just becoming a very challenging for them and the business itself. And give us some examples and maybe cases that you have dealt where you've seen positive progress or positive outcome. You have clients, you have dealt with different companies, so maybe you have some stories to tell us.
No, absolutely. One thing I did want to share with you, and it comes back to why I did the program at Yale, is I work with a lot of female emerging leaders, and I can even say just emerging leaders. One of the, someone that I mentor is a male. So I'm not always focused on women, but a young male. And one of the things I find, because I'm such a cheerleader and I really love coaching and, because and promoting, like, I swear to God, I always say I love to promote people. I came out of the womb as a feminist, but I always thought I don't think I met anybody that I didn't want to promote. But I find with young women, I'm always amazed. And then I see this in myself too. So I think, wow, are we not making any progress? But, I mentioned that event that we do. And I've always wanted to put women out front, right? Like, I don't care if you're just entered the workforce or whatever. We all have an incredible voice to share. And I'm always amazed at how nervous women are. I feel like women just don't promote themselves enough. And that part of that is getting out there, because, as a leader, Marion, you do a lot of public speaking. And so I love coaching women, young women, to say, you can do it, get out of your comfort zone. We all need to get out of our comfort zone. But part of that too is it's even like small things, like, the book Lean In, right? The reason that was written is because when you go into a meeting, when we used to meet in person, but we're getting back to that a bit. We are in Canada anyways. And you often see women sitting at the side and there's no room for them at the table, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really important to not have that. I know it sounds like such a small thing, but everybody needs to be at the table at a meeting, right? Like, you don't want to be off to the side. I've also believed, because, in coaching women, I'm such a champion in that if you've done a great job, Marion, I want to tell everybody in a meeting, not so much brag about me or whatever, God forbid, but I want to shout out other people. I do want to give other people a voice and give them credit where, they say with women that we just don't take credit for our work. And, I can certainly say this about myself. I don't know if it's just I have this martyr syndrome. I'm not really sure, but I don't do that. And I'm starting to say, you need to take more credit for your work, Alix. And, I'm not an emerging leader, right? I mean, what the heck? Why am I not taking credit for my work? But it's the little things. I even heard a woman who was quite senior say in a session I was in, how do you ask a question in a meeting? And that blew me away too, because, sometimes with women, we're drowned out, right? Maybe your voice is not as, you're not as powerful, whatever, don't have the presence or whatever. But I certainly see that. So, again, it's the little changes that, we can all make big impact with the little changes. But I also wanted to, again, sort of keeping on this little changes theme. It was about a couple of years ago. I was talking with a friend colleague, somebody I had just met, and she worked at a university. And we started to say how much we felt that male allies should get together. And we ended up going to the leaders that we support and started this group, Better and Stronger Allies Together, which really focuses more on males. But it was funny because that started as a conversation, and then we brought all these incredible people together. And when you bring, I really feel like having everyone at the table to talk about how do we drive change. And sometimes we have to have the uncomfortable conversations, but that was certainly an example of, how we drove great change. And again, it's just having a conversation, and it just, someone said to me recently, like, success is all about execution. And I feel like in that situation, it definitely was this conversation turned into a group where we brought hundreds of people together. So that was certainly one example. But I also feel, I have a blog in one of the tech publications here in Canada, and I feel like we need role models,
Yeah.
Like, we need the gender diversity role models. So I'm really trying to do that. I've done a number of columns so far. This is my thing as well, just being a writer, a storyteller. I just want to put that out there. And it was so funny, Marion, because when I first started out, I worked at one of my first jobs was a weekly newspaper in Amherstburg, Ontario, where my mom currently lives. And it was so funny because the owner wanted me to go and interview female business owners. And all these years later, I'm still like interviewing female, accomplished females. So I love it how I'm continuing. I never would have thought all these years later I'd be doing that, but I love it. And the two ladies that I interviewed recently, one of them is a CIO, Galen Gray, CIO at McMaster University, and then Fariba Rouhani is a CIO at Terranet. So they're just incredibly accomplished ladies. And, it's just so great to, they're very busy, but you give their voice, right? They're so influential as well. So those are just a few of the examples that...
we touched briefly on that topic, and it's very interesting to see what do you define as a role model. What is a good role model? Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the characteristics or what have made them accomplished. And not just in their career, but what about their family, how they've balanced this? Because doing that, and we talked earlier, it's one of the fundamentals. Women are the only one who can give new life, birth on planet. So, and sometimes I know they're incredibly responsible and caring, but that also can mean that they may make a sacrifice of not having a family, for example. So it doesn't mean they don't care and cannot care in a different way, but you got to have a balance. And if everybody chosen to do that, then we're done. There's no future. So I'm just thinking here of what is a role model, do you think, and from that perspective that you've seen in your...
certainly it's the role models, obviously the title. I believe that great leaders don't need a title, right? Like I feel like we're all leaders. And I did want to share this quote. This is kind of something that guides me is, the most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any. And that is by Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple. Or what Marianne Williamson said, which is our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So I do believe, Marianne, leaders, I don't really, I've interviewed people in the C-suite. I've interviewed people who've been taken on the Taliban. But I really believe that there's so many heroes and so many people have stories to tell. I mean, I've put people on panels who are 16 years old, and but they are just so accomplished that, and being pegged very early on as being great leaders. And so you get these different perspectives. So to me, a role model is just somebody who's really doing something different, right? They have something great to share with us where, again, particularly like the, balancing of, the work-life balance. And, I'm not a mother. So I'm a fur baby mother. I have a dog, which is what I always wanted to be. But I do feel it's so hard to balance. Right. And so I've never been in that situation, but I hear that. And I feel like, it's really balancing is like making time for yourself. I have a lot of friends who, again, they're balancing everything under the sun. But I always feel like, you and I going for lunch is a really important thing to do. Marion, we have to take that time for ourselves, right? And I feel more than ever, you mentioned like the well-being and mental health, like a lot of us are taking time during the day to just do some breathing and to get in a different zone, because I feel like we really need to think about how all of everything that's happened over the past few years, what it has done to us, right? So I definitely am a big proponent of, who's a role model. It's anyone that I feel like is inspiring all of us, right? And can help us in, again, balance things or be better at your job or just rejuvenate you again, right? Where you see somebody's doing something that, because, that was like the Me Too movement where, a lot of women that in our community, they were just feeling so downtrodden because we were not moving the needle in tech, right? But I think that the Me Too movement gave us this boost of energy that change can happen, right? You know how you get, Miriam, when you think, oh, I don't think this is going to change. I don't think we're going to, when you think, I just don't think this is going to happen. And I think that in terms of just all of those role models, it just gave us all that fresh boost of energy where we thought, I think we could do this. I think we can do this. Yeah.
Well, look, as an expert in the world of communication, what role do you think genuine care plays in good communication?
So, sorry, what was that?
So, as an expert in a communication in the world, across the world, and really you've come across many different organizations, companies. But what do you think is the role of care, genuine care, really plays in the because communication is so central to everything we do, to our problems, to the way we feel, and just thinking of when you sincerely care, and what is the role of genuine care in the communication in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think, we are so fortunate in corporate communications because we're really the only one that spans the organization, one of the only ones, not the only. But we also work with leaders. So you do have the ear of the leader, right? And your job, one of my friends said, you're not earning your keep or your salary if you don't tell somebody. You know how sometimes leaders don't hear things, right? People aren't telling them things. I think that's where in corporate communications, we can really sit down with the leaders and say, maybe we need to, I think part of what's so important is we have to talk to one another, right? There have to be these moments where you sit down and find out, take the pulse, right? And that's where you can counsel the leader. I think the managers need to take the pulse. I think they need to find out how employees are doing, right? To take the pulse. How are they doing post-pandemic? How are they doing as we move into 2023? I think that's so important, the face-to-face communication. And we always base things on, if it's a focus group or whatever. And I think that's where we can drive change. I think that's where as leaders, we're pretty powerful because we have the ear, right? And certainly, I think that's a really important role to have. But I would also say too that maybe as communicators as well, getting across some of these great messages in terms of care, where engaging people and letting them know how powerful we can all be, like maybe to help another employee or to be there for someone. I feel like I feel like sometimes, people are working from home and you could feel a little bit alone, particularly if you're single but I think it's just being there and taking the pulse. I think, I've worked from home for, I started my business 22 years ago. So I've worked from home for 22 years. And so I know how important it is to stay engaged in the importance of meeting and doing the face-to-face. And so I think it's kind of, getting the, being able to counsel leaders and then being able to all of us come together, right? And support one another. Because I think that's really important right now, where we need to be there. You need to watch out for someone, right? And help someone. If you see, we work together, like you see your coworkers more than you see your family in some cases, right? And so I really think that's important. And, I wanted to share, I was meeting with a friend of mine, and she actually works for a company that they're all about, people feel that Canadians are nice, right? We're known as being nice. Well, they've sort of leveraged that whole idea of Canadians where their culture is nice. And my friend and I were sitting down and we were having dinner, and she told me, and I said, what? No way. I couldn't imagine a culture that was built on niceness. It was kind of utopian, or I don't know. It just sounded so incredible. I couldn't believe it. But I mean, again, culturally, you can, as a leader starting from the top, like we're going to treat each other this way, right? Like we're going to be a culture built on nice, and you treat your coworkers with respect. And we view when we're dealing with a problem, don't forget, we look at things from a nice perspective. And I thought that was really interesting, Miriam.
No, absolutely. It's when it comes down to really, well, first of all, I love Canada. I almost went there to study.
Oh my goodness!
That was
That's
my.
too bad.
But I will visit soon, so it's on my list to do. And Canada is quite unique in many ways because it unites a lot of. It's such a large country, second in the world in terms of land, but it's so underpopulated. So I think it has a lot of potential for growth, and because of that, really differences of different nations and people. And I think Canada has something special there, of course. So yeah, being nice and accepting is probably not a bad thing, you know. I think it's but again, it can be seen in a different way. So we'll take the positive.
Yes.
Do you celebrate Thanksgiving or not?
Yes, we do celebrate Thanksgiving, but we celebrate it in October. So we have our celebration early in October. So we've already had like our turkey and stuff. And, definitely want to wish all of our Americans. I love Americans. And I find Americans the friendliest people. I love going to the U.S. But to just celebrate, they're celebrating right now. But, I love Thanksgiving, Marion, because, again, it's leaders who care. Like it's a time for us to pause and gratitude, like really, when we get caught up in our world, isn't it the best thing to just talk about what you feel thankful for? And it just, whatever. Yeah.
It's very interesting you said that because, well, thank God, first of all, for having even this conversation today, because people are very diligent to ask God for favor.
Yeah.
But are they as diligent of giving God thanks for all the things that they have?
Yes.
Sometimes it's quite selfish because we're not as diligent, of giving thanks every day.
I know.
So in a way, it's great that we have this reminder. But again, I'm so grateful. Thank God, thank Jesus for having this really moment, being alive, being here, especially in this crisis time. So it goes out to everyone who celebrates, but not just for the celebration of the turkey and the food and the Black Friday. It's just really the actual essence of being thankful.
I know, I agree, and I often say to my friends, when we had our Thanksgiving, I sent out to my friends how blessed I felt to have them in my life, and I feel like, my friends have been so important to me in helping me through what we've been going through, right? And it has been incredible. It has, I'm a member of a number of different communities, and I totally agree with you, Marion. And I have something, I have the Calm app on my phone, and I do the Calm for 10 minutes every day. Just take 10 minutes and just come down. And one of the things they do is they send you something. What are you grateful for today? And then you can save it too. And I think it's so important because, when you are kind of feeling overwhelmed and you think you're having a horrible day, or in your mind, because it's all about what you think and how you perceive, right? It's like you start to think, I'm pretty blessed person, When you start writing it all down, you go, this is like, I need to like get a grip, because the big perspective is how lucky you are, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, look, on that basis, how do you take care of yourself, Alix?
Well, I'm a big walker, and I heard somebody say that if you were to bottle exercise, it would be the best. It would be the best-selling drug in the world. So I walk a lot. I have a Fitbit, so I know how much I walk. And Marion,
you walk every day.
Yes, yeah, and because here in Canada, we don't have snow today, but we usually do. But the one thing,
you got plenty of land to walk on.
I know. I'm just like, it's my thing. It's my thing. But I also find too that getting out into nature, like, when you're dealing, like you've got some kind of issue or something at work, you gotta, like for me, maybe I'm doing a communication plan. I need to figure out something, how to do something. I find that walking is the best thing to just open up my mind, like the creative juices, like either that or being in the shower. Cause I remember years ago, my friend said, we should all have showers in our cubicles at work because that's where you get the best. That was so funny. But I also feel, I've done a lot of training in, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've done training in this area. And one of the things that's so important is starting your day off on a high note, right? Sometimes we get out of bed and sometimes the whole day just kind of overcome. It's just overwhelming. Maybe you're going to have a very busy day. But, I've been taught that you should take those moments to just reflect, right? Maybe do a little bit of meditation then. And that kind of sets the stage for a great day. And I do believe that. And I do believe in taking those moments, or say if you have, you're triggered by something during the day, just walk away from your computer or wherever and just maybe go for a walk or do something, get away, right? Get your head in a different space. I mean, these are things that I think are so mentally, they're just healthy, right? I mean, we have to, it's amazing, how much breathing, like how you're breathing differently and all of a sudden you feel completely different. It's the breathing is phenomenal, I think. And,
no, it's really, really nice to hear. And just thinking about the book you wrote, tell us a little bit more about your book and what are the key takeaways or advices? Maybe people want to take it or read it, but just maybe a few major points from your book and the stories, because you shared so many stories.
Yeah, well, I think it's just one of the biggest things is kind of not letting anything go. We're all like not, and I don't mean to say we all are, but there is a tendency for us to be non-confrontational, right? Like, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to, book a meeting room and have a huge discussion or whatever. But I think that one of the biggest takeaways is good communication, sitting down with someone and having a great business conversation. Because I feel like, certainly with the women that I interviewed, like you tend to hold on to things, right? And, a lot of it could be resolved by just sitting down, somebody has a different perspective, right? So I certainly saw that, because most of the women that I interviewed were younger, like myself. And also just, again, like I mentioned, getting out there and making sure that you're seen, right? And that people know that you've worked on a certain project, or, and not being the shameless self-promoter, but certainly just to get out there to show that, that you're doing things. Because people don't, we kind of figure that everybody should know certain things, well, why don't they know that? Well, you know what? They don't know that. And maybe you should tell them, right? And so it's just a question of, again, driving that change as well, like being part of that change, right? And not, and believing in yourself, right? And so I just really feel like a lot of these stories were just, you're seeing things in the corporate world that don't really align with who you are. But maybe there's things that you can do by talking to your boss or talking to people in power that you can drive change and you can bring about change. So I certainly, I certainly feel as being that coach and providing a primer to young women, I mean, I just think that, again, we can just help one another, right? And sit down. I mean, the people that you work with can be super helpful, like I remember when, because I was, when I was younger, a victim of sexual harassment a few times. And, I've actually spoken to a number, I mean, if I feel like, it's particularly after Me Too, I was amazed how much women were talking about it. And so I didn't know how to deal with that situation. And so it was a question of, talking to women that I really trusted and to talk, because in those days when it happened to me, it just never even occurred to me to complain to anybody. And again, that was me, right? But certainly the people that I trusted to sit down and talk about situations like that and how I could handle it better. So, and I'm happy with the way that I handled it, and just reaching out to my trusted advisors to give me guidance. And so, yeah, so it does delve into a little bit of deeper things.
This is just so insightful what you just shared, because often you can resolve situations by having that uncomfortable conversation,
Yes,
but
exactly.
in a caring way. You don't have to come across as offensive or defensive. You just come across and say, hey, nobody can deny your feelings, and if you share how you felt about a situation or what the problem is. And the other thing is, if you do not deal with it, you will have to deal with it later, which means if you put up with it, and if you say that's enough, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore.
Yeah.
People know and feel
Yeah.
that this will change, and but if you don't say it, people don't know, and they might even go further and further. And I think often in a simple conversation, or this getting out of, I like one phrase someone said to me, inconveniencing yourself every day gives you long convenience for the rest of your life. So getting out of your zone of comfort every day by having those maybe a little bit more difficult conversation, it gives you that. So thank you for bringing this up, and really it's important that this is spoken. And also, some leaders may not know what's happening in their organization unless some people brought to their attention, and so this is really important.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add to that, Marion, is that one of the things that I learned throughout my career, and of course, through situations like you mentioned, sitting down and having to have difficult conversations, is I started to focus on choosing companies that aligned with my values. And the minute that I did that, I felt like it was a place I could thrive and contribute and have purpose, right? And I have worked for some amazing organizations, and they do really align with my values. So I feel like there was like a bit of a disconnect, and we're really lucky today, because if you are looking at an organization, there's a lot of ways that you can find out information, Glassdoor or what have you. And I think doing that research, right, because fit is so important, right? Like we all want to contribute, we want to choose an organization, and you want to stay there and be dedicated, right? And make a great contribution, right? And so it's good to do your research, right? And so that was kind of a huge pivotal moment for me, where I said, okay, I need to work with organizations that align with my values.
Well, we have a comment here from Angel Podolsky. Actually, she's a leader who cares as well. This is so important. Great job, Alex. The change leader, women behind a lot of the change we are seeing in this area. So that's great, and thank you really for supporting and making a difference, for giving this advice of great value. Final point, Alexi, what would you like to see for a more caring world? What do you dream for for a brighter, better future?
Well, I was mentioning that, the nice culture, and I really feel that, I do believe that if we all are kind of, if you have somebody within organizations or wherever that are modeling that behavior, I love that, because everybody will, you have somebody at the top who believes in something, and everybody will start to model that behavior, right? And like I say, I feel like those small, you make those small changes, and it can bring about huge change, right? So I think it's just that mindset of, what do we want? And, you choose a caring, you're a caring leader, and you model that behavior, right? And then hopefully, maybe others will follow you, that sort of thing. So I really feel like the future could be that whole mindset of let's all get out there and behave the way that we want people to be caring. So we're gonna, we're out there modeling that behavior, right? So I think, and I do think, Marion, that we're changing. Like I say, I feel like the world is changing. We see all this beautiful diversity, and I feel that we're getting there, right? We're definitely getting there, and I feel like, it's baby steps, but we're going in a very good direction.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing this as well, because if we have more role models, which is one of the inspiration for having leaders who care, that we want to showcase and give stage to those who have made a difference, because how you rise matter. You may be successful, but how you got there.
Yes.
Matters. So and happiness, someone said to me, happiness is not of the end outcome, what you get, but who do you become along the journey.
I know.
You're going to become a better person, more caring person in that. This is where the joy and happiness is hidden often, and I couldn't agree more with that statement. But also, one of the highest measurement of index is our inner peace and joy we experience, which is derived from who do we become along that journey, living that an effective life, understanding the principles. So those are really great examples of what you shared, and really keep encouraging and spreading that hope and that inspiration, and help women that are in difficult situations. And I know often we make decisions based on emotions.
Yes.
Before emotions, there's a different way to make decisions, and the first thing that you need to look at when you make a decision is to defend the consequences of that decision for years to come, not just for tomorrow, not just for a few. If you're able to defend that and you're prepared and you think so it's like having wisdom and enlightenment for years to come to see. Then you need to look at what are the principles of living an effective life, which it's written in scripture. Then comes emotion. The problem is a lot of people skip the first two and just go to the emotion.
I know.
And emotion is, while we should not ignore it, it can really lead to a lot worse emotions later on. So it's really important that people really take the time and moment and see what, look at where they can find help, what success they look like, what others have done, what they have not done or suffered. So really what you do is of great value. So thank you once again.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. What a great conversation, Marion. I really enjoyed it.
Really pleasure. And
thank you.
Thank you once again. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone who was watching that celebrates. And
absolutely.
blessings go your way.